What's good, fellow outcasts and other rejects? Welcome to WTC, the Anime Outcast. First off, if you're new here, we upload anime what-ifs based around My Hero and other shows like. Secondly, did you know 80% of our audience isn't subscribed? So in order for us to continue to make good content, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Now without further ado, let's get into the video.
Within a marble scattered valley formed a massive archaeological effort. Dozens of professionals from around the world worked tirelessly as they carefully dug within. There in the center was a man with dark black hair of Japanese descent. He worked silently with a serious expression on his face as he carefully dug in a small squared-off section. Upon striking the ground lightly, he felt as if his pick had made a discovery. His eyes shined as his hair stood on end. Could it be? He thought as he delicately brushed away the dirt with a light fur brush, revealing a sharp yet ornate fixture. His heart nearly stopped at the realization that he might have found the target of their excavation. Upon realizing what he had found, the man got to his feet and waved wildly at the other fellow archaeologist. "Sir, come quick! I think I've found something!" The other individual jerked their head in his direction, some of their mouths turning agape.
What is it, Hizashi? Found another
He turned and saw the slight glistening metal.
Hizashi found it!
Exclaimed the older man, as the entire crew began to cheer loudly, as this had been the discovery of the century. Many weeks passed until the entire section was deeply and carefully excavated, revealing a statue that lost to time. One of the historic treasures of Greece thought to have been lost to time was now rediscovered in modern day. It stood a towering 11.2 meters tall, decorated in gold and bronze. The ivory stone still shockingly intact with the exception of the golden angel statue in its palm, which was broken in half. Hizashi stood in the front of the statue's ivory face, which was striking but colossal. Placing his fingertips on the legendary statue, he admired the legendary craftsmanship. This was truly a dream come true.
We finally found it, Hizashi. The Athena Parthenus,
said the grey man, his eyes welled with tears. It had been this gentleman's life work to find the statue. He was fortunate enough to have it found in his lifetime.
Yes, we most certainly have,
responded the black-haired Japanese man as he could hear the commotion above the deep dugout site. The two men made their way above through the sculpture that was made around the statue for further examine it. There, they were met with dozens of reporters reporting on the scene of the amazing discovery.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time,
said the gray-haired man as he lightly scratched his beard with a large smile on his face.
Thanks to my colleague, Hizashi Midoriya, we have found the lost Athena Parthenus.
The sudden praise and announcement brought great embarrassment to the black-haired man, as he was not expecting to be included in the announcement. He blushed profusely as he bowed and answered the questions from the media. Several more weeks passed and the statue for the first time in almost 2,000 years in the Parthenon, in its center as it always designed to be. The news of this spread across the world. The archaeologists were paid handsomely by the government, which were funding the expedition. Though now that this year's in Greece had finally concluded with the discovery of the century, what was he to do? The black-haired man stood in the now abandoned Parthenon. His colleagues and the media left for the day, his hands in his pocket and his gaze never parted from the face of the Cheristophin woman. Perfection, he whispered as a light gust of wind passed through him, chilling him to his core. The man held his brown trench coat in his hands, unmoving. A cold night wasn't going to bother him too much. He was still too excited. Looking around, his eyes seemed fixed on, strangely enough, a woman. She was statuesque with olive skin, kissed by the sun. Her hair was of a golden hue and long to her waist. His heart immediately skipped a beat, never having witnessed a woman of such beauty till this day. The woman strolled casually to the statue, her movements graceful, almost as if they had no weight to them. She wore a delicate sundress with a large white hat to match, her fingertips slightly pressing on the foot of the statue.
Excuse me, miss,
said the nerve-wracked Japanese man as he approached and nearly tripped over his own feet approaching her.
You really shouldn't be here,
he continued sheepishly, thinking of how this place was currently under very strict security for the time being, but her presence made him question his every word.
Oh, forgive me. I guess I didn't see the signs,
the woman responded, her voice graced by the enchanted accent, as he couldn't quite identify. Vaguely Greek, possibly Italian, but he couldn't know for sure. As he stood across from the woman, he noticed how she towered over him, only adding to the nerves that were overtaking him.
This statue. You're the man who rediscovered it, are you not?
She asked him, which made his blood rush to his cheeks immediately. She seemed to be well informed.
Well, it was the entire team. I couldn't take credit for myself,
responded the black-haired man as he rubbed the back of his head, tussling his wild black hair.
I am very grateful. It has been centuries since it has seen light.
The woman smiled warmly toward him, which caused his heart to flutter with excitement. Through the following months, Hizoshi and the mysterious woman found themselves meeting constantly until something blossomed between the two. Hizoshi had fallen madly in love with the woman, and it seems as if she had as well. They spent a year in each other's company, deepening their bond. He showed him the mysteries of Greece, visiting every place that he could think of. She was incredibly knowledgeable and had an endless array of stories to tell. They were happy. They were in bliss, though the fateful day came when it was time for Hizoshi to return home.
Darling, as you know, I must return to Japan in a few days. Please, come with me,
said Hizoshi as he held her hands by the water at the dock. The blonde looked away, her eyes filled with tears. She wished to go with him, but it seemed something was holding her back.
Hizashi, you must know, I care for you dearly. But
She stopped, as she couldn't hold back her tears.
I just can't.
The woman cried as she pulled her hands away and ran from him, leaving him reaching out for her.
Please, no! Come back!
Yelled out Hizashi as he ran behind her, until he couldn't run any longer, dropping to his knees and reaching out into the distance. His heart broken.
Evangeline!
He whispered as he dropped his head, his tears moistening the ground below. The day came that Hizashi boarded its plane en route back to the native country of Japan. As the plane broke through the clouds and escaped view, the statuesque woman stood watching the craft leaving from the side of the mountain.
Hizashi, my love,
she said quietly as she held a small pearl pendant that hung from her neck tightly in her grip. From behind her, a slender man with curly hair appeared, wearing a blue cloak over his shoulders and a silver-rimmed hat. "Oh, Lady Athena, babe, your father, Zeus, has called for you," spoke the male with a gentle smile on his face as he awaited a response.
Yes, Hermes, I heard,
said the woman as she turned around and her skin and hair began to glow lightly, sparkling like jewels.
Let us return to Olympus,
said the woman as the two left the mountainside and ventured skyward toward Mount Olympus, home of the gods. 9 months had passed and Hizoshi awoke in his empty home, sitting in his kitchen with a cup of coffee in his hand. He hadn't done much in the past months other than follow-up interviews and such upon returning to Japan. He had received special honors from the Japanese government for his work on the archaeological find. It seemed he had gained slight celebrity status amongst the educational community, and some of his findings were published for his fellow countrymen to study. Taking a sip of the black liquid, he felt it cool to the touch. How long had he been holding this? He blew a small flame into the mug, instantly heating the liquid. After taking a sip, he sighed sadly as the taste was dreadful either way.
I really need to learn how to make a decent cup of coffee.
He spoke out loud to no one in particular. Suddenly, the bell of his home was rung, which caught his attention.
Coming!
Yelled out Hizashi as he quickly drank his coffee and placed a half-empty mug on the counter. Upon opening the door, he saw no one standing there.
Hello?
Asked the man, poking his head out, scanning for any visitors.
That's odd.
Then, his ears perked up, hearing the sound of whining infant below him. Looking down, the black-haired man's eyes spread wide, seeing a baby rat in satin-like blanket inside of a beautiful ornate basket with a letter held together by a string to the handle.
A baby?
Questioned the man, completely puzzled by the surprise at his doorstep. Lifting up the basket, Hizashi brought the child into his home and placed the basket on the sofa, sitting beside it.
Hey there, little one,
said the man in a kind tone, running his fingers and caressing the child's rosy cheeks. He smiled and reached up and grabbed the letter that came with the child. Upon opening it, he immediately recognized the writing on it. It was from Evangeline. Grabbing the letter with both of his hands, he brought it close and began to read it intently, memorizing every word.
My dearest Hizashi, you have no idea how much I miss you. I wish things were different, that you and I could be together. But sadly, it's impossible. Our love did bear wondrous fruit. A baby boy. Soon after your departure, I found out I was with child. But due to a volatile situation in my homeland, I cannot raise our son. Please, I beg of you to take care of our child. But don't lose your heart. Find love again, and give our son a mother. The one I can't be. Evangeline.
Hizashi sat there, stunned for what seemed like hours, but truly it had only been a few moments. He read the letter over and over again. His collar was now soaked with tears. The only thing that snapped the man to attention was the sudden happy coo of the child.
My boy,
said the man, reaching into the basket and placing the child in his arms with a warm fatherly embrace.
My little Izuku.
Izuku was named given to the baby boy that had traveled a great distance to be united with his father, and though at this time no one knew it, this boy was destined for greatness. While Izuku was growing up, Hizashi had met a young woman named Inka at the nearby market, and the two hit it off, later becoming his wife. Inko took care of the young Izuku as if she were her own, coddling the boy and being caring, attentive wife as well as Hizashi. As Izuku grew, his hair, which seemed to be black like his father, had become lighter and lighter to the point with a dirty blonde color, his skin similar to his mother's of an olive complexion, while his eyes were identical to his father's of green emerald. He truly was a remarkable child, with exceptional strength even as a 2-year-old, lifting heavy objects that would be beyond someone of that size. 6 years later, Izuku Midoriya played in a nearby creek with his close friend Katsuki Bakugo. The two were throwing pebbles across the water, attempting to hit the cans that they had stacked across as target practice. Bakugo was hitting every target using his quirk to blast the stones like bullets. A loud clang filled the creek as another target was hit by the blonde-haired boy.
Ah, right! I'm unstoppable! Try beating that!
He said in a cocky tone while crossing his arms as if he had already won.
Come on, Ka-chan, that's not fair!
Responded the young Midoriya, his cheeks getting warm from embarrassment.
It's easy with a quirk like yours! I don't even have one yet!
He protested before stomping on the ground and throwing a pebble across the water, missing the target.
You have to aim, you know,
said Bakugo as he rolled his eyes at his friend's behavior. Bakugo threw another rock for Izuku to catch.
I knew that,
he said sheepishly before turning to look across the water once more. The young Midoriya closed his eyes and took in a deep breath. He concentrated on the cans until they were the only thing he could mentally picture. Lifting his right arm, the child then imagined himself launching the rock and hitting the can, knocking it out of its place, His body followed his mental projection, and suddenly the pebble in his palm began to glow white. Closing his eyes, the young Izuku Midoriya took in deep, calming breaths. He concentrated on the cans until they were the only thing he could picture mentally. Lifting his right arm, the child then imagined himself launching the rock and hitting the can, knocking it out of its place. His body followed his mental projection, and suddenly, the pebble in his palm began to glow white, which caused Bakugo's eyes to widen and his mouth to open. Then he threw the pebble, that as it flew over the creek, it made the waters part from the speed of the rock. Then, as the small stone made contact, it made a significant explosion, similar to that of a cherry bomb going off. The sudden bang threw the two kids back as they fell to the ground on their backsides, both looking at the small crater where the cans once stood.
Did I?
Asked Izuku, pointing up at himself, his eyes wide in pure shock, while Katsuki began to laugh and smiled wildly.
Dude, that was awesome!
He said excitedly while made the young boy jump for joy. The two celebrated as Bakugo had nearly given up on his friend ever getting a quack. Upon further study of his abilities, the doctors were baffled as the boy demonstrated quack-like abilities, but the study showed he didn't have any physical signs of having an actual quack. His physique was that of a child of the 20% of the world that did not possess quacks, but his feat spoke for themselves. This would mean that Izuku was one of the kind when it came to quack development, garnering much interest for the many researchers in the country, though Hisashi and Inko kept this away from the public eye. His quirk was dubbed energy compression, as it seemed that Izuku could energize the atoms of object that he touched, and then after making them unstable, he could condense their energy and cause them to explode. Not much was learned about the quirk, but at least this much was known from the Midoriya family. Now 8 years had passed, and Izuku had grown tremendously. He was taller than Bakugo by at least 4 inches, and already had the body that seemed like that of an athlete. Dashing through the sidewalk, Izuku sprinted toward the passing bystanders and crowds along the way. Now 15 minutes late, the dark blonde ran into his school, its grounds already empty as the class had already started. Bursting through the doors of his class, he shouted out of breath, I'm sorry I'm late!" said the boy loudly, which caused the entire class to become silent as they glared at him, some in the back holding back their laughter.
Why, yes you are, Mr. Midoriya. You're lucky it's the last day of school. If not, you'd be in detention. Now, take your seat,
said the teacher as the boy dropped his head in shame and sat behind his childhood friend Katsuki Bakugo.
You're a real loser, you know that?
Said the fiery blonde as he leaned back, looking at Izuku upside down, and laughed mockingly.
Shut up, Kachan,
replied Izuku as he looked away and leaned back in his own chair. The final day passed and all seemed well with the world. As their class emptied out in the end of the school day, Katsuki and Izuku remained.
Let's go spar at the gym. Don't you still need to practice your quirk?
Asked the spiky blonde with his hand slipped in his pockets and a cocky grin on his face.
Sounds like you want to get your butt kicked,
replied Izuku, which immediately set Bakugo off.
I'd like to see you try, nerd!
Spat the boy as he began to create small explosions that erupted from his palms.
Even if I wanted to, I can't. I told my dad I'd help him around the house today,
responded the emerald-eyed boy with a smile, lifting his arms as a sign of surrender. The two went their separate ways as a happy Izuku walked back to his home, where his parents awaited. The sun was setting, and the smiling boy had passed a few villain attacks that had occurred throughout the day. He stopped every time and took notes of the events in question, adding to his impressive collection of data, which he hoped he would be useful to him when he becomes a hero. The streets, as he came closer to his home, became quiet and empty, as most were already at their homes or stuck at work. Deciding to take a scenic route, Izuku passed below a nearby bridge, just taking in the serenity of the quiet city. Then, as he passed by a manhole cover, he stopped dead in his tracks when feeling a disturbance.
Thanks to the outcasts and rejects for watching to the end of the video. If this video gets 80 likes in 2 weeks, we'll continue this series. Other than that, if you have any questions about the series or channel, sound off in the comments or feel free to join our Discord. Thanks.
What the ball is blessed with...
Stupid.